Capcom's Monster Hunter once was a niche franchise that lingered in the shadows of the company's other series, such as Resident Evil. But with the rise of the fifth generation of games, Capcom was able to break into the new world that was the mainstream with their games and their massive expansions. While Monster Hunter had always boasted a dedicated player base with games such as Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate and the Monster Hunter Frontier MMO, it was games like Monster Hunter Rise and more notably Monster Hunter World that brought in more players to the world of Monster Hunter. Despite its significant role in the franchise's success and future, the fifth generation of games could not avoid controversy among its player base. This is, in part, due to the differences in direction both World and Rise take with the established formula the series is so proud of. Monster Hunter has released games on both home and handheld consoles such as the PlayStation 2 and Nintendo 3DS. However, due to both the difference in market audience and technology, both platforms had received versions of the games developed by different teams. Both the games' communities dubbed the types of games as mainline and portable, reflecting their featured platforms. However, more details denote a game's status in this formula. For example, mainline games' logos feature dragon heads that tell what generation they belong to. A numbered title was also the tell for when a new generation had begun. Now moving back to Monster Hunter World, not only did this game kickstart the fifth generation, but it also provided changes to the traditional formula that one could argue revolutionized the series, bringing it to a new light. World brought seamless maps, implemented a more dynamic ecology where monsters could have turf wars, and more importantly, streamlined the flow of gameplay for newcomers with the help of scout flies and other quality of life improvements. Following the release of World and its expansion, Iceborne, players both veteran and new to the series were looking forward to a newer, yet similar experience to the previous one they just played. However, with the release of Rise, some players were disappointed with the shift in focus the game had in comparison to its predecessor. This had created a certain divide between the community, with some going as far as saying they strayed too far from what Monster Hunter should be. Now, having played both World and Rise myself, I would like to look at both of these games and compare their fundamental aspects to one another to determine whether one game is simply superior to another, or if it just boils down to the individual player and their tastes. To achieve this, we're going to analyze and compare elements that the player will experience, such as the story, flow of gameplay, and of course, the monsters. If you asked most players about the story, I'd bet that not too many people would care about the game's plot or lore. However, it goes on to say that a major appeal to most dedicated fans is the thought put behind the monsters and the environments that they roam. World does this pretty well in my opinion. In fact, World's plot focuses on the effects that Elder Dragons have in the ecosystem. It really hits home to the player that these are real worlds that are brimming with life. In contrast, Rise takes a simpler route for its plot, as the hunters in Kimura Village must prepare for the rampage, a calamity that involves hordes of monsters attacking the village. Of course, you successfully defend the village, but then find out that the cause of these rampages is two elder dragons having sex every 50 years. Alright, Capcom. Although Rise lacks a bit in its plot, it makes up for it in its characters. Now, I want to preface that I'm mostly basing this part of the review on both cutscenes and in-game events. I don't know too much of the characters' backstories and lore that is spread out in flavor text across the games, so please take this with a grain of salt. Throughout your playthrough of Rise, you meet various characters that aid you in your hunt, whether it be during the preparation phase or even during said hunts. These characters include Hinoa and Minoto, the quest and hub maidens, Yomogi the chef, and Master Usushi, just to name a few. While some of these characters portray very anime-esque personalities, it often ends up adding more charm and variety to the cast than any sort of detriment. World, on the other hand, it has its cast. Now, I'm not saying that the characters in World are bad, maybe except for one, but it felt like a lot of the characters were just there to give you advice, tutorials, or just straight out advance the plot. I want to say that the character that exerts the most personality is the Huntsman, and he doesn't even talk. So really, in terms of the story, I think it just depends on if you want that ecological lore, or if you want something more charming and simple. But no matter which game you pick, you'll be seeing crazy shit like this. As I once already mentioned, World focuses a lot on, well, the world, so it doesn't really experiment on gameplay as much as its portable counterpart, but it still brought a few new additions that would also return in some way, shape, or form in Rise. Turf Wars, while simple at its core, provides a grandiose battle for players to watch in awe as their favorite monsters duke it out together. It not only grants a spectacle to the hunt, but it also plays into the whole theme that the game presents of this living, coherent ecosystem centered around the new world. Outside of that, there are certain improvements like monster mounting playing more of a role during hunts. It still has you hopping on the monster and hitting it, but now you get to topple it with a flashy finisher move. World's expansion Iceborne also brought along it multiple improvements to the combat with the addition of expanded movesets for weapons and augmented gear, allowing players to further customize their kits to fit their playstyles. Another mechanic added into the game was the Clutch Claw, a tool like that of a grappling hook that gives players the ability to weaken a monster's parts and even do what we in the hunting business like to call wallbanging. Now, the inclusion of the Clutch Claw to my knowledge was mostly divisive for the community, as in like the tool itself was deemed okay, but people were mostly negative about the way tenderizing monsters' parts were almost necessary to validate certain hunts. That and, well, missing wallbangs surely felt annoying. By the way, like, little pro tip, if you didn't know, you can actually keep trying to go for wallbangs on the monster as long as it isn't enraged, which you can tell by if the heart monitor in the little horn on your left is still blinking orange, so that could help. Overall, I'd say World's gameplay is solid and feels good to play. I find that the Clutch Claw to require more coordination and timing from squads when approaching monsters makes the overall flow of gameplay more enjoyable. If you've played Monster Hunter Rise, you'll know that combat and traversal are very agile thanks to the new mechanic, Wire Bugs, which enables you to perform aerial maneuvers and silkbind attacks that each weapon can have and unlock. This not only opens the map design to include more verticality, but it also gives more flexibility and options for your weapon of choice. For example, I played the Greatsword during my first playthrough of Rise, and having silkbind attacks that let me reposition quickly was a big help in landing hits and avoiding monsters' attacks. Rise also doubles down on certain notions such as traversal and monster mounting. The new Palamute companions offered quicker mobility and quality of life features such as sharpening your weapon while moving. Wyvern riding is basically like monster mounts from previous games, but now you actively take control of the monster, allowing you to use its moveset to hurt itself and other monsters around it. Moreover, the way Rise is streamlined through its village and hub quest system, alongside the fact that the map shows where your target monster is as soon as you begin your quest, makes the game very much pick up and play. The Sunbreak expansion only improves and adds on to the core gameplay with mechanics like switch skills and curious crafting. I think it's safe to say that Rise attempts to experiment with many more mechanics than its mainline predecessor would, as expected from a portable game. But it's also clear to me that World tries harder to incorporate its mechanics into its overarching theme of ecology as seen with the turf war mechanics. Nonetheless, I believe you could simply see World as the AAA experience, focusing more on providing a grandiose and consistent experience, whereas Rise is much more arcadey in nature, so people can just hop on and hunt and still have those awesome moments. Now, I could probably go into detail about both games' rosters of monsters and their variants, but honestly, this review is already longer than I intended it to be. So for this section of the review, I'll be ranking both games' monsters on a tier list alongside my fellow hunter Jacob, who is much more experienced in Monster Hunter than myself, so we'll flip on over to there. Alright everyone, so I'm here with my buddy Jacob.
Hey guys.
And yeah, we're gonna do a tier list. As you can see, there are a lot of monsters to go through. Alright, so Rathian, where do you think, Jacob?
I get Rathian like a B.
A B? A? Okay.
Normal Rathian from World, I'm giving like a B.
Yeah? I'm just curious, why do you think he's like B compared to Rathian and Rise?
I mean, there's not a big difference between them, but I'm always thinking about how we're fighting them. I'm fighting Rathian and Rise with my Rise arsenal, and I'm fighting Rathian and World with all the world mechanics, and it's slower.
I'm going to agree with you, because I feel like anything that can fly in Monster Hunter is much more fun to fight in Rise, just because you have that extra mobility.
Yeah, like in terms of like how good the monster actually is, I mean, they're pretty much equal because they're the same monsters, but I'm also factoring in like how fun it is to fight them, and in that regards, Rise has an edge.
I'm starting to realize we might end up with a predominantly in Rise tier list. Look, if you'll just look.
I mean, we gotta get past all the rafts. We'll see what happens.
World Kieran.
Yeah, Kieran,
I would personally put it at A because I really like the big focus on just positioning with this fight.
He's a good fight. I've always found him to be an awkward monster when it comes to attacking him. But yeah, like his attacks are unique. They rely a lot on good positioning and always being very aware. Yeah, I'll put him in. I think it's a great fight.
Okay, Rejanes, Rise Rejanes, they're good fights. Like,
I'm curious, what do you think? Do you prefer World or Rise or Jennings?
World, I prefer World Rejanes a whole lot more.
He's much more aggressive, I find, in World.
We have so many like less mobility options, and it makes it a much better fight, in my opinion. For Rejane, he was the easiest it's ever been in the franchise. But he's still good though.
I agree. I feel like the whole point of the Rejang fight is that he's supposed to be batshit crazy thanks to his movement. But because Rise, you have better movement options, naturally it's going to downplay his own. I think I definitely prefer World's version of Rejang. So I feel like maybe Super Saiyan Rejang would be S tier for me, but either way, definitely an A tier for me.
I was thinking the same. I would put World Rejane and Furious Rejane from Rise in A, and normal Rise Rejane in B.
Alright, now we got the Zenogres.
Yeah, Zenogres, listen, like, overrated. Rise Zenogre is like a B. I prefer World Zenogre.
I definitely think the Zenogre is harder in World. Same reasons we said for, like, Rejang and the others.
Like, most things are hard in the world, but there's a line between like the tedium and the fun challenge, and for Zenogre there's a funner challenge and to be found in world.
Amatsu. This one,
great fight. I was surprised how good it was in Rise. The challenge isn't all there, like nowhere near level of world final bosses, but
it's very much like the spectacle.
They really put the wirebucks to good use, which is great. They really made Amatsu feel like he belongs in Rise. Put him in S.
I definitely agree.
The Nergigante, I'm tempted to put Nergigante in S. What to do with Nergigante, where like he makes like short hops to get closer to you.
He's always there to keep you on your toes.
Absolutely. One of the most faithful to that phrase, keeps you on your toes. It's definitely Nergigante. Like, he's the definition of that. The biggest attack is a dive bomb, very threatening. His spike mechanic is really fun, really interesting.
Would you be willing to put both of them in S tier?
I put both in S tier.
Alright, I agree.
I put both in S tier. They're not that different. But just go both in S tier by default. Safi's an S. Like Safi, really huge fight. He's a much more standard looking dragon than all the other Elder Dragons, which makes him stand out because most Elder Dragons don't look like European dragon. All the different moves he has and the phases. We had a fantastic experience. I didn't think we'd win. I did not think we'd beat him when we were running out of time, and we had like a minute to spare. And we gunned him down, and we beat him. It was amazing.
He's an S. I'm sure when the vote is finished for top songs of Monster Hunter, Sap is going to be at least top 5.
Behemoth. I think at least a B.
Yes. But I think I put him A.
I'm not against that either. I'm just curious because, like, I know you were really annoyed by the tornadoes.
Yeah, I get really annoyed by him. Like, one of the most annoying fights. The clips, like the big meteor thing is kind of cool.
Like, for me personally, the attacks weren't annoying. Like, they were challenging, but I didn't find, like, the tornadoes annoying. The meteors, personally, especially once I got the hang of the timing with the emote, honestly, I found it more like as a fun minigame, but I still find that hilarious when I'm like, I got the timing down, and you're like, no, you don't, there's no timing.
I just got pissed, bro. I was like, no, there you go, ain't no timing, it's fucking bullshit.
I think it's... I think it probably would have been an S tier if it wasn't as annoying or like,
yes,
you know.
I was about to say that it has potential to be an S if they didn't have so many things that like it just has some really annoying things. But A tier is good enough. Like A tier is good still, so a great tier. So
honestly, I think I wouldn't mind putting both of the Malzinos in S. I find them really fun.
I only want to put Primordial in there. I don't think Malzeno is on this level.
Okay. That's cool.
But with what's an S? He's close. Great fight. But yeah, Primordials, yeah.
So after going through all the monsters on the tier list, we've kind of organized it so that each tier has a ratio between World on the left and Rise on the right. So for example, we have our S tier where World is dominant with 7 on World side and then 2 on Rise's side. So looking at each tier, we can conclude that World is very much like a really high highs and low lows kind of game, as it dominates both the D and S tiers. So if you're really into the long term of the game, then you're probably gonna love World much more, as you're gonna get like stellar fights with stuff like Zhang, Nergigante, and Safijiva. But if you're looking for a more concise and consistent experience in terms of the monster quality, you're gonna want to go for Rise, as it kind of just wins over the middle tiers, A, B, and C. A lot of it is just Rise monsters, so really it comes down to just if you want good consistency or not. That being said, no matter which game you're going to be playing, they both have good monsters and bad monsters. As you can see, these are still both great games to play, again, just to show a bit of a difference between the two. In conclusion, I think that while both Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter Rise have their pros and cons that distinguish one from the other, they could be seen as two sides of the same coin. They both share similar aspects of each other through the fact that they share the same generation, but they also differ in that they each set out to offer different experiences for the player. I'm happy that we can see different sides of Monster Hunter thanks to the ecological lens that Worlds gives us with its bustling world, and the striking lens that Rise allows us to see with its additions to combat. The start of the 6th generation is upon us with the release of Monster Hunter Wilds being a year away. It seems the game is very much following in the footsteps of the last mainline game, World, but who knows? There have been discussions brewing up about the return of certain mechanics, such as an updated version of underwater combat, and even a potential open world, like an actual open world. So let's just see how far Capcom is willing to reach to set Monster Hunter on a new horizon yet again. If you made it this far into the video, thanks for watching. This was more of a short review that I needed to make for a personal competition I have with my friends, so I didn't want to divulge too much into detail, especially since these are pretty big games. But that being said, let me know how you feel about any of my points that I brought up in the comments down below, and maybe even consider subscribing if you're into my content. But other than that, have a good one, and thanks for watching.